Don't hold back. So, plot. Plot is about, at its core, a sense of progression, in my opinion. Sense of progression. I use the word sense, meaning the illusion of progression. Why is it an illusion? Anyone have a guess?
Because you have complete control of the story.
Yeah, I talked about this earlier, didn't I? You have complete control, right? You can make it happen. You know, Tolkien could have written the ring getting there in about 3 sentences. He didn't. He wrote it in 3 books, which was 1 book that became 3 or whatever. But you could have written this. Oh, I'm going to give you a peachy ring. Here you go. Woo! Food flying through the room. You even caught it. No, you didn't. Okay. That's all right. The floor is pretty clean, I'm sure. It's pretty clean. So, sense of progression. You want to move things along. You want to give the reader the sense that things are moving along. And the idea with this is you're going to make promises, and you're going to fulfill them incrementally in order to give a sense of progression. All right? So, the promises you make, these come into what your story's about. And you can start identifying, start writing down, my story's about this. My primary conflict's about this. My secondary conflicts are about this. So, ask yourself, early on, how do I make promises? How do you indicate to the reader what your story is going to be about? You want to do this in chapter 1, if at all possible. Certainly in the first couple of chapters, you will give them a promise of what your book is going to be about. How do you do this? Well, let's look at some examples. One great example, and I've used this one before, is Indiana Jones, the first one, right? You watch this, how does it start?
He is getting that little golden head.
He's getting a little head thing, right? This is a story in microcosm for the entire Indiana Jones series. In a couple of minutes, Spielberg gets across to you, hey, guess what? This is what our series is about. An adventuring archaeologist that everything goes wrong for. And you get that. That's the promise of what you're going to get out of that film. Your job, and early on, you don't have to use a prologue like that, but your job is to give the promise. If you're going to have a romantic story, then you should introduce us with a character-driven first chapter with conflict for this person that we like and an indication that there might be something missing in their life. If you're going to have an action-adventure story, then don't start with something dull in a classroom. All right? Opening chapters give the promise of what the story is going to be about. And so once you identify kind of what is this conflict in my story, what is this capital P big plot, you can start realizing, hey, here's how I can design a first chapter that will make the promise that this is what you're going to get. It's why epic fantasy loves these these prologues. They're very, hey, look, it's an epic. Where you start the prologue, you're like, wow, I have no idea what's going on, but it's epic! Because here's the promise, big epic fantasy. You're going to get a lot of interesting world building, and it's going to be stuff that deals with various time periods and historical events and all of this sort of stuff. You want to get this across. Now, there are different types of plots. And I view these different types of plots in how I'm going to make my promises and how I'm going to incrementally fulfill them. So, just list a few of them up here. One of the big ones is mystery. And any of these can be your main plot, your capital P, but they can also be subplots. And a good novel is going to have several of these. Almost every novel is going to have a mystery of some sort. Not all of them, but quite a large number of them are going to have something that you don't know. And this is kind of what I call, this is an information plot. So, a mystery is, how would you give a promise for a mystery? You already answered the question. Somebody else. Yes? You already did too, but you didn't get a featuring. There you go. Yeah. All right. So how do you give this promise?
No featuring, I forgot. You establish something that the characters are curious about.
Yeah. Sure. I mean, it's pretty easy, I would think, to get across. This is a mystery. There is a problem. We don't have the answer for it, right? You've all read mysteries, I would assume. At least you've read stories with mysteries in them. All right. So what? Yeah, go ahead, right here.
You mean either giving the characters and the audience a question?
Yeah, giving a question. So we hang a lantern on it, is what we call it. Have I told you guys about hanging a lantern on it? Screenwriting term. So you hang a lantern on the fact that something is missing, and we need to figure out what it is. Did you have a question?
I was just saying, generally speaking, traditional mysteries start with some sort of action or death
Right.
or some event. Dead body.
Right. Dead body in the living room. You don't have to eat these, by the way, if you don't want them, but I'm giving them to you. Yeah, it starts with the question, wow, we found a dead body. What are we going to do now? So, mystery. I call these information plots because the way you're going to then make good on your promise is by doling out pieces of information. Just like Scooby and Shaggy will find clues. Here's a piece of information. Our plot is information-based. We will make incremental progress by slowly building up a framework, and the promise to the reader is eventually you're going to find out the answer to this, and it's going to be cool. All right? Don't forget the end. It's going to be cool. All right? People who are reading a mystery are wanting a certain thing, and that promise is that the whodunit, the mystery, is going to be solved in an interesting way, that the characters are going to have to be clever to figure it out. Your heroes, therefore, if it's an information sort of story, then you may theme how you build your character. Depends on if you build character first, or plot first, or setting first. I do all three depending on the story. But usually in this brainstorming, you're like, all right, information plots require a character that is going to be interested in finding this information out, and perhaps somebody that has relevant abilities to solving this. Okay?